Hello, little ringmasters of irrelevant circuses. You know what really drives people insane? Silence. Not just any silence. Your silence. That ghost mode. Dead-eyed, unbothered, unfuckwithable silence. The kind of silence that turns their whole performance into a one-man meltdown on an empty stage. You didn't clap. You didn't boo. You didn't even look. And that right there humiliated them more than any insult ever could. See, they crafted chaos like a masterpiece, hoping you'd dance. They threw tantrums in public and disguised them as justice. They weaponized attention. But you starved them of it. And now they're starving for validation in front of an audience that stopped watching the moment you stopped responding. They set up spotlights. You brought shadows. They built mirrors. You shattered them with a glance. They screamed, "Look at me." And you whispered, "I don't entertain clowns." You were never their opponent. You were the void their noise couldn't fill. And that's what broke them. You didn't fight back. You didn't retaliate. You outgrew the arena. Because while they were out here auditioning for relevance, you were in the lab, evolving into something they couldn't predict. You ascended in silence, like a glitch in their simulation, like a ghost in their algorithm. And now, every time they shout your name, it echoes back with nothing but their own desperation. Tell me, what's more terrifying than being ignored by a god you tried to provoke? They can't handle it. They're unraveling because you don't post for pity. You don't argue for sport. You don't explain your power to those still addicted to applause. You just are, and they can't define you. So now they have to invent entire narratives to cope with the fact that you're unbothered by their existence. Look at them, sweating in silence, shaking behind keyboards, planning strategies to bait a reaction from a ghost. But you're not a ghost, are you? Number. You're a glitch in the karma system, a variable they can't solve. A storm that didn't arrive with thunder, just results. You didn't need a rebuttal. You became evidence. Your evolution humiliated them because they realized too late. This wasn't a war. This was a removal. You unsubscribed from the circus and suddenly the tent collapsed. Funny how quiet it gets when the main character leaves the script. And now, they're mad as fuck. Oh, you feel it, don't you? That silent rage, the group chats, the fake check-ins, the vague posts, the seething curiosity behind every, "Hey, just wondering, are you okay?" Number. You're not okay. You're lethal, and it shows. Their little ecosystem was built on predictable energy, predictable reactions. But you became unpredictable, untouchable, unbothered. And they don't know what to do with that, because they can't cancel silence. They can't argue with distance. They can't mock what they can't reach. You were never here to clap back. You were here to ascend so far, they'd need a telescope just to misquote you. And now they're desperate for drama. They miss the old you, the responsive one, the one that cared about the opinions of loud, small people. But that version died. It died when you realized you don't owe presence to parasites. You don't owe energy to envy. You don't owe anything to anyone who tried to turn your peace into a battlefield. You walked away from the performance, and the audience followed you. Now they're the ones talking to themselves, embarrassed, angry, exposed, all because you refused to pick up the rope in their little tug-of-war. And here's the twist that really breaks them. You weren't trying to destroy them. You were just trying to build yourself. And that is what they can't forgive. Not that you fought, not that you won, but that you never even showed up for the war, and still ended it. Saint or psychopath, angel or demon, number. You're something else entirely. You're the lesson they never wanted to learn. You're the version of silence that feels like punishment. You're the unanswered question they can't stop asking. And you didn't have to scream. You didn't have to post. You didn't have to prove a damn thing. You just became the proof. So let them be mad. Let them choke on assumptions. Let them perform for invisible crowds. The ringmasters are embarrassed. The circus is empty. And the real show left the tent a long time ago. With you. Laughing, silent, unstoppable. Because here's what really twists the knife. They needed your energy. They thrived off your reactions, your defensiveness, your explanations, your emotional leakage. You were the power plant, and they were just the flickering bulbs trying to stay lit. But now you cut the cord, and they're sitting in the dark, screaming at shadows, hoping someone, anyone, will notice their little performance collapsing in real time. And you're not even watching. You're not even logged in. They can't comprehend it. How you can be so silent while being so loud. How your absence created more chaos than their presence ever did. Because here's the uncomfortable truth they won't say out loud. They built their identity around opposing you. And without you reacting, they don't exist. You stripped them of their mask without laying a single finger. You exposed their desperation by refusing to validate it. You humiliated them by simply being immune, unreachable, uninvested, unmoved. And that silence? Oh, that silence was surgical. Because it wasn't just ignoring. It was a mirror. One they couldn't look away from. Suddenly their followers saw it. Their allies noticed it. The audience felt it. All that shouting and signaling, and the one person they were trying to provoke just wasn't there. Like a phantom, like a warning, like a test they failed in front of the whole fucking world. And now they spiral. They lash out in petty ways. They try to subtweet their way back into relevance. They cast shadows, hoping people forget who turned off the light. But it's too late. You became bigger than the battle. You evolved into something that feeds on stillness, not chaos. You became unpredictable, and that's the most terrifying power of all. Because predictable people are controllable, and controllable people are entertaining. But you are none of the above. You are the unreadable code in their simulation, the bug that broke their emotional algorithm, the ghost in the chat thread. The WTF happened? That gets asked in private group chats at 2 a.m. And still, you remain unshaken, not out of arrogance, but because you simply don't need them anymore. You buried your old self quietly, and let the new version crawl out the grave with no explanation. They were ready for a battle. You gave them an extinction event, and they'll never recover from that. So go on. Let them scramble for meaning. Let them whisper your name like a myth. Let them scroll your silence and project their guilt into it. They know they fucked up. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. And now they're stuck in an invisible prison of their own creation, one where the only bars are the things they never got to say to you, the responses they rehearsed that never got used, the posts they drafted and deleted, the fury they swallowed. Because you were never watching. That's power, not in what you destroy, but in what you walk away from, intact, elevated, and dangerous in your calm. They wanted a war. You gave them irrelevance, and that hurt so much worse, because the real humiliation is being ignored by a legend, being forgotten by the very person you tried to define yourself against, being outgrown by the storm you tried to contain. And now, the circus is quiet. The spotlight's burnt out, and the only one laughing is you. Oh, let's go deeper, shall we? Because humiliation like this isn't loud. It's not viral. It's not explosive. It's slow, suffocating, rotting from the inside out. You infected their peace with your indifference. And now, every silent moment feels like a sentence. Every post they make echoes with desperation. Every smile they fake cracks under the weight of unacknowledged defeat. They thought they were pulling strings. Turns out, you were the puppet master, just choosing not to play. And that choice, that's what destroyed them, because it wasn't a reaction, it was an omission. You erased them from your energy field, from your orbit, from your storyline. They expected war. You gave them irrelevance. They expected drama. You gave them emptiness. And now, they're spiraling in a room full of mirrors, realizing their whole performance only existed when you watched. Now, they're just screaming in silence, trying to start fires in a world that moved on without them. That's the secret power, isn't it? Not noise, not revenge, not proof, just absence. A void so cold, so deliberate, it restructures their entire identity. They weren't ready for you to disappear from the script, to become the ghost that haunts them without ever showing up. They still check your page, still watch your silence, still hope for a slip-up, a crack, a blink. But all they get is stillness, and that stillness is deafening. Because it says everything they fear. You don't need them. You never did. You outgrew the battleground. You upgraded your operating system. You deleted the virus, them. And now, in every quiet moment, their brain replays it like a trauma loop. Why didn't they clap back? Why didn't they defend themselves? Why don't they care? Why am I still thinking about them? Because you didn't fight them. You rewired them. And that's what they'll never forgive you for. They thought they were the show. Turns out they were just noise, background static, filler characters in a storyline they mistook for their own. But you became genre-defining. You moved like a myth through their reality, something too potent to name, too powerful to touch, too evolved to entertain the old script. And every time they mention your name now, it doesn't come from confidence. It comes from confusion. They're trying to dissect you like a problem, trying to analyze your silence like a code. But the truth? You're a paradox, saint and psychopath, messiah and menace, peaceful and lethal. You can sit in stillness like a monk, then dismantle an entire kingdom with a whisper. And that duality? It terrifies them, because predictable people are easy to slander, easy to define, easy to destroy. But you've become undefined, a shapeshifter, a signal jammer, an entity that no longer plays by their laws of engagement. You've broken the algorithm, you're off script, and they're still trying to drag you back into a plot you finished chapters ago. But there's no return now, no rerun, no rematch. You turned your back on the crowd, and in doing so, made them realize you were the entire attraction. They weren't mad because you clapped back. They're mad because you didn't. They're mad because your silence said more than their paragraphs. They're mad because you didn't defend yourself. Because you didn't need to. You're no longer in their arena. You're up in the control tower watching the simulation melt under its own delusion. They brought a megaphone to a chess match. And you already left the board. So let them squirm. Let them tell themselves stories. Let them act out revenge fantasies in group chats that never make it to real life. Because deep down, they all know. They lost to someone who didn't even fight. Someone who didn't flinch. someone who didn't need the final word, because they became the final chapter. And now the silence is the punishment. Now the quiet is louder than the drama. Now the lack of reaction burns longer than any rage ever could. You humiliated them, not through exposure, but through evolution, through indifference, through the terrifying truth that you're just not on that frequency anymore. And nothing, no post, no whisper, no slander, can pull you back down. Because the real flex is that you disappeared from their narrative, but they can't escape yours. See, humiliation like this isn't just personal. It's existential. You didn't just hurt their feelings. You shattered their framework. They had you labeled, boxed, filed under manageable. They thought they understood your limits, your triggers, your boundaries. They thought they could predict your behavior like a well-trained pet. And then you glitched. You broke pattern. You mutated, not loudly, not violently, but with the kind of eerie calm that makes people check over their shoulder at night. You became non-linear, untrackable, unreachable, unfathomable. You stopped being a person to them. You became a mythological anomaly, a ghost that shows up not in presence, but in impact. You haunt them through everything that never happened. The apology you never gave, the fight you never entertained, the chaos you never acknowledged. You are the absence that feels like a threat. And that's the thing about people who love control. They can't survive in uncertainty. And you weaponized uncertainty. You disappeared like a glitch, and now their world is crashing. They're reloading your page like it's gonna give them closure. They're rereading old messages like they'll find a secret code. They're dissecting your silence like it's evidence in a murder case. Because in their mind, it was murder. You killed the version of you they could manipulate. You assassinated their power over you. You buried their relevance without even showing up to the funeral. And now they rot in the grave you never dug, but they jumped into anyway. That's the part they won't tell anyone. That deep down, they know you won. Not because you said anything, not because you made a scene, but because they're still talking about you, and you haven't said a damn thing. They know. They all know. The ones who talked behind your back, they're watching your glow up in real time, and it's killing them. The ones who tried to bait you, they're choking on their own setups, praying for a response that never comes. The ones who thought they could break you, they're now studying your strength in terror. Because you didn't go mad, you went quiet, you didn't react, you rebirthed, you didn't fight, you ascended. You didn't just humiliate them. You rewrote the concept of defeat. Because this wasn't retaliation, this was evolution. And here's the twisted part that really makes them unravel. They wanted you to win. At least the version of you they could still control. The version of you that needed validation. The one that fought back. The one that gave them an audience. But this you, this cold, still surgical version, they never planned for that. Because this version doesn't forgive. It doesn't entertain. It doesn't announce comebacks or drop inspirational quotes. It just vanishes and then dominates. And that scares them more than anything. Because if they can't understand you, they can't control you. And if they can't control you, then they never mattered. All that drama, all that manipulation, all those fake smiles, staged attacks, whispered threats. Worthless. Because the person they were aimed at no longer exists. And now, they're left screaming into a void, an invisible circus act still twirling for an audience that's already left the tent. So let them spiral. Let them slip. Let them keep trying to expose a version of you that's been dead for seasons. You are post-narrative now, post-reaction, post-drama. You are beyond, and they're just embarrassed actors in a play they thought you'd never walk out of. But you did, with your head high, your soul intact, and your silence louder than any scream they ever threw your way. Because sometimes the most violent move is not showing up to the war they started. And now the whole fucking battlefield is haunted by your absence. You really want to see how deep the collapse goes? All right. Let's drag the soul out now. Because by the time you walked away, you didn't just leave them behind. You unwrote them, every petty jab, every public spectacle, every gotcha moment they orchestrated, erased, nullified, like it never even mattered, because in the end, it didn't. And that truth, that's the one they can't survive. They built entire personalities around opposing you. They branded themselves off your name. Their confidence came from your engagement. Their clout came from trying to attach themselves to your orbit. But the moment you stepped back, the moment you refused to acknowledge their little theater, they crumbled. Because people like that don't know how to exist without opposition. They're addicted to conflict. They need a villain. And when you stopped playing the role, they started malfunctioning. Because here's the cruel twist. They never hated you. They envied you. They envied your presence, your ability to stay centered while the world tried to push you off axis. They envied how the room shifted when you walked in, how attention naturally gravitated toward you. While they had to scream, exaggerate, lie, and still never fill the void, you were the center. And they were trying to orbit by force. Until you cut gravity completely and let them drift into irrelevance. Now they're floating, lost in their own narratives, unwatched, unanswered, unimportant. Because when you left their circus, you didn't just walk out. You took the whole fucking spotlight with you. And now, they're left performing in the dark to a silent room with no one watching. Even the applause was yours. They just borrowed it. And now that it's gone, they're exposed for what they really are. A shell, a rerun, a glitchy echo of a forgotten threat. And that's the humiliation that eats from the inside out. Because now the only way they get mentioned is in conversations about your rise. Now the only time people see them is when someone says, "Hey, wasn't that the person who tried to bring you down?" And then, silence. Your name is the punchline. Theirs is the cringe. Your transformation made them look prehistoric, outdated, petty. Because while they were rehearsing drama, you were rehearsing dominance. While they were posting for pity, you were building in silence. While they were gathering likes, you were gathering power. And now, they're staring at the monster they accidentally helped create. But it's too late to take it back. Too late to talk it out. Too late to reframe history. They didn't realize that you were learning the whole time. Smiling, silent, recording everything. You were tracking patterns like a surgeon, studying behavior like a scientist, waiting, not for revenge, but for elevation. The kind that doesn't clap back. It closes the entire platform. And now, they can't speak without revealing the bitterness. They can't post without exposing the insecurity. They can't breathe without choking on your name. You didn't destroy them. You simply healed in public. And that was their worst nightmare. Because the more healed you became, the more unrecognizable you became. To the people who only bonded with your wounds, they wanted you stuck, angry, reactive, but you outgrew them like a snake shedding skin, silent, cold, lethal, and now your very existence offends their stagnation, so they lash out at shadows, They whisper behind walls. They build alliances with other cowards. But no matter what they say, what they post, who they gather, it all leads back to you. Because you're no longer a person to them. You're a benchmark. You're a trigger. You're a walking mirror of everything they failed to become. And that's the kind of humiliation that never fades. Because it doesn't live in the public eye. It festers in the soul. It's what they think about when they wake up. It's what keeps them scrolling at 3 a.m. It's what silences them when your name gets brought up in rooms they're not ready to enter. You didn't just win. You became unreachable. You became untouchable. You became unnecessary to their reality. And now they're trying to rebuild an identity without the person they built it against. But how do you repair something that was never real to begin with? You don't. You sit in silence. You watch them try. And you keep climbing. Because the most powerful thing you ever did was walk away without turning back and still become the only thing they can't stop looking at.